Hey everybody, it's Logic Bomb 82 from the Mature Minded Gamers. We are a group of adult gamers who have jobs and lives, but also several passions, including video gaming, board gaming, and much more. You can join us by visiting our website, maturemindedgamers.com. Today we're bringing you our Star Trek podcast, where we cover the latest news and all things Star Trek. What's up, everybody? It's Logic Bomb 82 or Eric from the Mature Minded Gamers. We have just finished watching Star Trek Picard, Episode 1, Remembrance. Got a full crew with me tonight. Guys, what's your initial reactions after finishing the episode?
Holy crap, man. That was amazing. I'm kind of lost for words on this episode. It really brought a sense of epicness that I think this entire series is going to have. And I love the unknown of the clones and the possibility that we could be seeing a little bit more data. I think that's gonna be pretty awesome. The Romulans building this Borg cube at the end, or kind of like reconstituting it to fit their own means. I think it's wow. That's just crazy. What'd you think of it, Brad?
I mean, I'm pretty speechless so far. I've kind of got that goofy look on my face. I'm so stoked for this series.
That's good. Just initial reactions is good. We'll get to some questions in a second.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Because I'm still absorbing.
Mike, what'd you think? What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. There was a lot of really cool stuff in the first episode, and like Brad said, it's just going to take time to process it. I really do like how they brought some of the characters back, even if they only had small bit pieces, like Maddox and everything. So I really liked it. See where it goes.
Oh, I'm very intrigued with that.
Right. We kind of talked about that briefly before, but Ryan, what were your thoughts?
It was good. It seemed to be paced well, and that created a lot of questions. I don't know any of the bit part characters. I just know the main ones. So it was interesting to see such an old Patrick Stewart, and I like the fact that he named his dog number 1.
Right. Ryan, you've never watched all of The Next Generation, right?
I'd say I've watched 80% Next Generation.
Okay.
But that's the one I've watched the most of.
Gotcha. All right, let's get to some questions, guys. First off, the first thing that I triggered on was when he's playing, obviously, poker with Data, and they're on the Enterprise. And he doesn't want it to end, obviously, because, he knows it's a dream. But we see Data's hand, and it's 5 queens. What do you guys think that means? Anything? And they're also all
hearts, I believe.
Queen of Hearts.
Yeah. So my initial thought after we learned that the synths are going to be in pairs, maybe there's more than just this pair. I didn't know where else you'd be going with that. And it may be nothing.
I thought it was just a way to show that this was not reality. Like this was something illogical was happening that was going to cue you in that it was a dream, essentially.
That's a good point. That could be all they were getting at.
Yeah, I didn't read too much into the 5 queens. I mean, I definitely noticed that they were, obviously the Queen of Hearts.
It kind of makes me think, what was that movie, Inception? It kind of made me think of something from Inception where, like the spinning tops or something like that, where you could tell that it was like not reality. So that's kind of what it made me think of. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh.
That's a good point. You guys are probably right on that. I was probably thinking too much into that. All right, next up, we find out why Picard left Starfleet. We've all speculated on this, and we were pretty accurate as far as that goes. I didn't really the whole ending where the synths attack Mars is what drew them away from helping Romulus. Is that what you guys pulled from that?
Yeah, I think that's how they kind of I've always thought like if Picard leaves, it's either going to be because he's too old to continue doing the job well, or they do something that he's not going to agree with. I mean, he's very principled, even in the TV show, and I think that when the upper echelons of Starfleet, when they kind of do things that he doesn't agree with, you can tell it kind of bothers him.
I don't know that I agree with the burning of Mars being the reason why they pulled away from the Romulan situation, because it seems as if he harbors guilt for whatever happened on Mars, and if he's off leading that armada, maybe if he would have stayed on the Enterprise, he could have stopped what happened on Mars, and that's where the guilt comes from. But he's obviously taking some personal responsibility and ownership for what happened because he's living with it every single day, rather than being, across the galaxy trying to save different people. So for whatever reason, if he was supposed to be there, but he was also responsible for Mars, I think there must have been something else going on.
Yeah,
See,
see,
I don't
I
necessarily- Go ahead,
interpreted that a little bit different. I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from, Ryan, but I saw that as he was remorseful for what happened to the Romulan population that was being ferried back to other planets. Because I understood that, and I'm gonna watch this 2 or 3 more times, so this may change, but I understood that once the attack on Mars occurred and just the loss of life in the Federation, that the Federation abandoned their efforts to evacuate people, and I think there was a massive loss on the Romulan side that weren't counted or weren't accounted for there, and I think that's the part that he was remorseful about. But yeah, you might be right, man. I don't know right now.
I agree with you, Brad. I think that when the Federation abandoned the rescue efforts for Romulus, I think is what Picard was really talking about and why he left Starfleet, when he was saying that the Federation it lost its morals, and they stopped helping him because they were trying to lick their own wounds on repairing the damage that the synths had to Mars, and because they stopped doing that, all the loss of life that the Romulans suffered. But Picard kind of stayed and tried to do what he could, from what I can understand, to rescue people, and that's why he has those people living on the chateau with him.
I mean, I think we even see that in the Next Generation, where people are very hasty when it comes to the Romulans to start shooting, and he's like, let's take the diplomatic path first, and he's always kind of been that way, and it almost makes me wonder if with how high of a clearance he had, that why they act like it's a great mystery of why the synths like blew up Mars and Utopia Planitia, and it almost makes you wonder if we're going to just learn what exactly happened during the show. I'm sure we will, and that some of the shadier parts of the Federation had like a hand in basically kicking that whole thing off.
I mean, we see a lot of the shadiness in the Federation in the Next Generation already, just from that series, and I feel like we're definitely going to uncover that in this show, and I'm pretty excited about that.
I slightly took it that, and I might be wrong on this, I need to do some research, that the Mars, how they were working so hard, I thought they were building ships to actually go save the Romulans. That kind of killed that operation, and then Federation pulled out. I might be wrong on that, but that's what I kind of thought in my head is what they were working on. We've seen a little bit of
the
that.
timeline is that the supernova had already occurred by the point that the synths attacked Mars.
The same day,
the rescue efforts were already underway to withdraw from Romulan territory.
Okay, I'll have to watch that closer.
Got a question. How do you guys know of a timeline? Where's that stuff at?
So the supernova is what also kicked off the Kelvin universe, and based on Spock's age and already kind of digging into it when the first newer reimagined movie came out, that kind of set the stage for a little bit of a time frame.
So the explosion on Mars happened in both timelines.
The explosion on Mars, well, not the explosion on Mars, but the explosion on Romulus is what
right, the JJ verse or the Kelvin, whatever.
It's what created that whole timeline. But then that's also what caused the Federation to help in this series help evacuate the Romulans to other planets, basically.
Okay.
Picard referenced Dunkirk a few times in this episode, referencing the explosion on Romulus. Do you guys think that is going to play anything later on, a factor into it, or you think it was just kind of Picard showing his historical?
I was thinking about that. That's a real interesting analogy because, Dunkirk was the Allies were trying to get out and were trying to evacuate and pull out, which I think is the parallel to pulling the Romulans out of their space, and the enemy came through and just massacred everybody. So I think they're, the synths are, there's something to that doesn't, that I can't quite fit into all this yet, but I think that enemy is larger than just Mars. I think something else happened that correlates to that.
So just a quick history thing for people who don't know about Dunkirk. I believe it was in 1940. The Germans advanced into France. They trapped a whole bunch of like Allied troops, and essentially almost every single like civilian and military vehicle and boat. They did everything they could to rescue as many people as possible. I mean, like almost all cultures, British, Belgians, French, they all just came to the call to be able to save as many people as possible. And it was one of those very historic. There's actually a pretty good movie about it by Christopher Nolan, but not to get off topic, just so people know what Dunkirk is. Yeah.
No, go ahead. I just, for those listening, go watch the movie Dunkirk.
All right, let's get back on track. So next up, the next thing that really triggered for me was
hold on. Because if what you guys are saying about the civilians are the ones that came to the rescue, then where were the civilians in this analogy? If he was adamant that that was the correct analogy for what was happening, then there should have been Starfleet people coming.
That's the point. I think what Picard was really talking about was the fact that they didn't bring in civilian ships. They didn't bring in the Federation. They didn't have Vulcans coming to help. They didn't have Klingons coming to help. They didn't have Andorians coming to help. Like literally nobody tried to come in and help the Romulans.
Well, then he would have said it's not Dunkirk, right?
Well, we didn't we learned Dunkirk was an example of what heroic and ethical and moral value stood for. And what he's saying was that's what the Federation is not doing now, because we didn't learn from the example we set at Dunkirk.
All right, I misunderstood.
That's how I took
it.
it.
I just had an interesting theory pop up there, but I don't know that I'm ready to share that yet. But in the analogy, Ryan, the way I understood the analogy while I was watching was that the Romulans were the people who were trying to leave, who were trying to get out, who were trying to do something, and then another entity, the synths or something else, massacred them.
No, I'm saying that the supernova.
I know what you're saying. That's my theory. That's my theory.
Gotcha.
Is that something else happened other than Mars?
Oh, there's got to be some correlation to the a synth. Something between the synths and the Romulans.
I kind of took it a little different. I took it as more of like a verbal jab at the reporter because of how she was behaving in the manner and tone she was asking her questions. And, she compared what Picard had accomplished in getting as many people together as to the achievement of building the pyramids. And I think Picard then turned that analogy, that phrase on her, and basically said, like the pyramids, it's a kind of like a great achievement, but he referenced a historical event that had a similar gravity of what the evacuation of Romulus was, where, it took a massive effort to save people's lives, not to build something so you could bury a dead body in. So I took it as more of like a verbal jab to flip it on her to make her look foolish for how her tone is and not knowing history.
Well, so in the moment while we were discussing this, I think I'm ready to start sharing that kind of conspiracy theory thing there. What if the synths were actually trying to assist and were trying to help, and something happened? The Federation did something, or the Romulans did something to piss the synths off, and that is what precipitated the attack on Mars. If the Federation did something to massacre the synths, that would correlate more to the Dunkirk story, especially him saying that the Federation lost its value. That would be something that him as an admiral would be more privy to than the common man would. You know what I mean? Like there's a hidden story where the attack on Mars was our fault.
I mean, we see several times through many of the series how we treat things that could potentially have, the capability of, what we would consider life. Like the exocomps, where they kept sending them into circumstances where they blew up and, or got killed, or and we find out that maybe they do have the qualities of life, and we're using them, without putting them into those situations because we don't care, because we view them as machines. They do the same thing with all those the EMH Mark Ones, where they just turn them into miners and they don't really care, or we don't really care or think about them. So I think there's definitely precedence for us, the Federation abusing those types of life forms just because of how we view them. And even the Doctor, where he wrote that play and the Hollow novel, and gets the rights taken away because technically he's not a real human, and they have to argue the point, very similar to how they had to argue that Data has rights as well. So I think as a whole, the Federation is not really good when it comes to that type of thing.
Yeah.
Can I jump backwards again real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry guys, I'm Trek newbie. Okay, so the supernova at Romulus was caused by the Romulan Eric Bana blowing up Vulcan?
Timey-wimey stuff. So there was the supernova at Romulus wasn't just something that happened that no one expected to happen. It's something that was a naturally occurring phenomenon that the Romulans detected, and they were trying to stop it. And the Eric Bana character was affected by that research. The Scimitar was a mining vessel in the around Romulus or Remus. I don't remember which planet. I think it was around Remus, but and it wasn't the Scimitar. Sorry, that was from Insurrections. But whatever the name that ship was, it was a mining vessel around Remus or Romulus or whatever, and Spock was trying to help stop the supernova with the red matter. Something happened. Spock got pulled back to the past, which also sucked back Eric Bana's character to the past, and kicked off that whole new series, that whole new parallel timeline. But
So-
this story is saying that same event is what then kept the Prime timeline heading in the direction of this show Picard. It was like a splinter in time at that moment.
So Vulcan has not been destroyed yet. That'll be destroyed.
Well, Vulcan has been destroyed in a parallel timeline.
Oh, okay. And that's not the timeline we're in?
Correct.
Okay. So
This is the Prime universe, not the Kelvin universe.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Slight spoiler here for anybody who hasn't watched Discovery Season 2 yet, but Brad, what if it's Control? What if that is what made the sense go rogue?
That'd be a whole heck of a long time for Control to sit on that.
All right, let's get back on topic.
All right. So next up, I have down on the list here is the fact that she obviously knows who Picard is and is seeking her because of something in her programming. So it points to being obviously Data related. And so the next thing I have is when she contacts her mother and tells her what's going on, and then her mother's screen kind of flashes and she tells her to go see Picard. She's like, well, I didn't tell you about Picard. So what is going on there? Do we think her mother's even real? Maybe she is an android too? Or somebody's controlling the communications? What's your guys' thoughts?
So I think that the daughter, Daj, I think is some way connected to Law. We talk about in our Next Generation podcast, I think in some facet, when Data downloaded Law's memories into his own, I think when they were talking about this in that first episode, that Data was trying to flash his memory before he died into the beta unit or whatever it was called. And I think some of that information that Maddox was able to get from that to try to the programming of Data, and I think that's the core of what has made him successful, is what Data was able to download. And all he was missing was that whatever that cerebral cortex or whatever they had said it was called. And I think a lot of that information, as far as like of who Picard was, because Data admired Picard so much, I think in some facet, Law with is the memory that is the one that he saved, or the one that he tried to back up to the beta unit, not his own. Because I mean, when I think about it, whose memories would I want to preserve over my own? It would be my son's. So if my whole existence was gone, as long as my son was still living, I'm fine with that. And I think that's what he was trying to preserve. Data was actually trying to do.
So do we think that her memories are fake, or did she really grow up with this family, or did the memories get implanted and everything's fake and they just popped her into was she at Starfleet? I was a little bit confused by that. Whatever she was studying.
She was trying to get into the Daystrom Institute.
I think she's real. I mean, she's flesh and blood.
She absolutely is, but I don't know that she lived out all the memories she had in her mind. I think some of that stuff was implanted or created or whatever by Maddox, fabricated to give her a backstory to make her appear more human. Whether or not there were laws or not, I don't know about that yet. I think that I just assumed that even her mother was a hologram or some other artificial intelligence of some sort.
Yeah, but how did Picard's memory get in there?
Fabrication, implantation. I mean, that
for what reason? Maddox and Picard never got along.
Safe
so
mode.
why would Maddox say, "Oh, Picard's the one that you need to go, implant that memory"? There has to be some reason that Picard specifically, and why it tied to Data's memory in that painting that nobody else has ever seen beside Picard and Data, as far as like the knowledge for it and everything.
They explained that the theory was you could completely rebuild and restructure an entire positronic memory from a single particle of positronic matrix. So, I mean, he could have. Picard was the closest to Data, then, and so, as far as a synth in this time, Picard would be the safest place to go. So, if there was an activation of some kind of safe mode or something, Picard would be the first place to go to, and I think Maddox would understand that.
That's what I assumed too. Was somehow he's found a single, speck of that positonic brain, and those are just part of the memories that are in there. And maybe she has all of them, and they just, they unlock when certain things happen. But that's kind of how I took it too. Is somehow he's found that, because I think that's what I can't think of her character's name, but I think that's what she alluded to, was to be able
Agnes.
to finish their research. That's what they would have needed.
Yeah, I thought that part was pretty straightforward. I just assumed the part of the positronic brain came from the B4 model, and then they put it in. So it wouldn't matter what Maddox would do. What's inside of her is what came from Data. So that's where I was kind of
like right after that moment. Like Picard had the light go off that if this were true and that Daj held some sort of Data's memories, that there was some part of Data that was still reclaimed other than B4, because she said B4, like almost all of Data was lost in B4 because he just wasn't able to sustain that. But
well, then what reason was the because even that scientist at the Daystrom Institute, what did he say? Oh, I guess that's one thing to do as far as like making a female as opposed to a male.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been just easier just to create all of the same stuff using, what made the female? Why choose female over male?
Because of that painting.
Well, I think Picard said several times he always wanted a daughter. So in my mind, if you're thinking like a clone or like you're engineering something, you're going to put like the positronic memory is part of the DNA essentially that you're putting in, and then it's going to grow like its own biological computer. So in this instance, instead of growing as a male, because that's probably what has apparently always happened before, because they made it sound like that was the norm, because this was a part of Data and what Data wanted. The girls came out as twins.
But he didn't want a daughter. He wanted a child, and Law chose her sex and her look. So again, that's why I'm led to believe that it's some part of Law that is part of that positronic matrix. I believe it is part of that cross between the two of them, Data and Law, and I think that's just we've got, I don't know how many episodes to go to kind of watch and figure out what's going to go on, but that's my call.
Time will tell.
Eric, what do you think?
So if I was Bruce Maddox and I remember who stood up the most for Data, it was Picard. So I think Bruce Maddox could have programmed her to seek Picard because he knows that, the one person that's going to fight for you and protect you is Picard. But also, Data and the painting, I think it may be a combination of some sort. I don't know how. Maybe the memories that Bruce or that Data got into that unit were still there. Bruce didn't know it. And so it kind of combined. And that's what happened, maybe. I think we're definitely going to get more reveal here. And speaking of the clone and everything, that's one of my next questions here. So we see her get what looked like acid spit on her and her weapon from a Romulan. I didn't know that was a thing. Maybe is that a normal Romulan attack, or is that just new?
No, that'd be new.
Okay, and then it obviously disintegrates her, and the weapon blows up and kills all of them, which surprised I think all of us, right? So I know it surprised me.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's some sort of like last-ditch effort for them, kind of like how spies will bite down cyanide capsules, because it looked like it killed him too.
Yes, it did. Yeah. But then we get basically her twin sister.
Aren't those guys clones? The people that were trying to kill him?
No, they were Romulans. I don't think they were clones.
I think they were just Romulan assassins trying to kill this because you recognize it's a synth and they're hunting them because in some way there's some sort of animosity between the two of them.
And I wondered if that's why they had that kind of acid spit attack where they died as well. Because it makes you wonder if the Federation obviously doesn't like them based off of the interviews and how people react. So are we really going to react well if a whole bunch of Romulan assassins are running out shooting people? So that kind of makes me wonder if that they're kind of like suicide assassins, where if they get caught, that's their last ditch effort.
Yeah, but so then why did the security feed for the police, quote unquote, not see anything else going on that rooftop?
I mean, they have teleportation devices built into their suits or something. I just wonder if they have something that also like bends light, so they're also invisible to the sensor somehow, or somebody reprogrammed it and deleted that from the feed. I mean,
that's what I imagine, because
more
even if they are,
go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was going to say that's to me that was again another thing that's pretty straightforward, because even if they have the cloaking device that they sort of talked about, Dodge wouldn't have, so they had to have doctored the film. That's just a trope in there to try to make people think that Picard is crazy, isn't it?
It could be, but I think her being, how powerful she is. I think what they were talking about was she also had a cloaking device, and I can see that being a thing. They might have all had a cloaking device, except for Picard, obviously. But I do think Starfleet's hiding something, or whoever the police was they're referencing.
Mm-hmm. I bet like Starfleet covered it up.
All right, so we see her twin on, obviously, I think it said a reclamation station or something to that effect, which is the Borg cube, the Romulan Borg cube that they're doing something on. And the twin references that she knew she was a twin and she had a sister. Now, the first Dodge that we met never mentioned that at all, and I think that was something she would have. She did mention her dad, and then we seen her talk to her mom. So I do think these are planted memories mostly for that reason. But what do you think is going on? Why would Romulan assassins be going after the other twin? Any thoughts on that?
Same reason they're going after the first one, because there's some sort of secret robot that they don't want to be around. But for me to answer that question, I got to put out a different conspiracy theory here. The Borg are obviously going to be in this series some way, shape, and form. And if you got the Romulans essentially rebuilding a Borg cube, then in my opinion, the Romulans are just working for some closeted Borg organization. Whether it's like one Borg is the boss hiding behind the door, Dr. Claw or whatever that's running everything. So that person knows obviously that just imagine if you were a Borg and your whole philosophy and your intentions in life is to always upgrade yourself to be better, then why wouldn't you want to be able to incorporate or assimilate a biological synthetic or a biological computer into your collective? I mean, if you could just make everybody that, then the Borg would even be more powerful than they were before. So I assume that that's probably where the aim is, because they didn't want to kill her. They wanted to capture her because she had not yet been activated, essentially, like that she wasn't she wasn't aware of what she was, but they knew that she had that inside of her. So, yeah. And that's why I think in the coming up scenes, you see that the one guy's trying to manipulate her or seduce her or whatever, rather than the front attack, which apparently didn't work. So that's my thought, my 2 cents.
I could see that, I guess. I almost got vibes of like the Quarians from Mass Effect, where it was like, well, your home blew up. We don't really want you here. You can have this rundown board cube if you fix it up, I guess. That's kind of how I thought was, it's a good place to pack a whole bunch of people.
That's a pretty good theory. I actually hadn't thought about that.
We've seen the one shot from one of the trailers where they're in a Romulan prison camp, and it looks like it's obviously inside of something. So maybe it's part of that. And we see Dodge in it too. That was in like the New York trailer. So maybe she's not, but they said she was a doctor though, when the second one. So I don't think they're trying to hunt her. I think the Romulans know maybe they were trying to hunt her sister because she would reveal the truth.
Do you think from what you saw, the second Dodge knows that she's an android yet, or does she still not know it?
Well, it's
No.
curious to know as far as like she knows she's a twin. We didn't know. Dodge didn't say anything about having a sister.
For one of them to have different memories than the other one, but the other one knows there's a second one. So I don't really know what they're trying to do with that.
Does she know there's a second one, or is it like one of those fake things, like the potential fake parents? Maybe she has like a fake sister as well, that unrelated to the Dodge we see.
Or there's another.
Well, that could be, but she was referencing the necklace again. She said she has a twin sister and her dad made them both one or something like that. And then we know Dodge, the first Dodge actually had it too. So it's kind of confusing.
I'm sure that'll be revealed.
All right. Any final thoughts?
We know they come in pairs. We just don't know how many pairs there are.
Right.
Good point.
All right. Anything else I missed? Any final thoughts on this episode, guys? Everybody
we
wants
decided to do that at the same time.
My bad.
Brad, go.
Okay. I just want to highlight that in this series, Romulans are going to have more than one personality. And I like that.
That is a great point, because we meet the two on his vineyard, and not what I expected at all. Will?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say something similar. I liked how the Romulans that are showing appreciation of what Picard did for them, and showing respect for Picard. I mean, Romulans usually only show respect for themselves or their own culture, and they really seem to appreciate who Captain Picard was, what he did for what he had tried to do for Romulans, and I really enjoyed that. You could definitely tell Patrick Stewart's age in this, and I'm looking forward to a little bit more action on his side, but yeah, I just don't know how much they're actually going to be able to put of what he's going to be doing, except for just being a crazy old kook.
Oh, and Guinan. I cannot wait until season 2 when Whoopi Goldberg comes back as Guinan.
Yeah, that was a pretty great moment. It was on the whatever their morning show is. He actually was on there, and he asked her to come in for season 2. Mike, any final thoughts?
I thought it was really well done. Like I said, hopefully we'll get to see a lot more aspects of the inner workings of Starfleet, and kind of like Brad said too, we get to see more of the Romulans other than just the military side that we're accustomed to. We get to see bits and pieces throughout the series. I can't think of the name of the episodes where Spock was on the Romulan home planet.
Reunification part 1 and 2.
Yep, there we go. So we got to see it kind of there where, it's one of those things where we only see them interact with the military side of things. So you just see the day-to-day where they're just trying to get through life. And, I think that's what we hopefully will get to see more of is, their society other than the martial aspects of it.
Ryan, what'd you think? You ready to watch some more?
Yeah, I'll see where it goes. I don't know. Overall, it looked good. The pacing was good. The shots looked good. I was disappointed there wasn't more, space in a space sci-fi, but apparently that's coming. The dog was still my favorite character, probably. And there wasn't near enough lightsabers. Other than that, it's pretty good.
Can we talk about one other thing that I'd like to ask you guys' opinions on, if that's okay?
Yeah.
So in a lot of Star Trek episodes, we have some pretty space centric, as you were saying, Ryan, intro shots for the intro of the show. This one kind of started off with a bang. It didn't, kind of give us a softer, like a softer opening, and then went into that very CGI, almost like the beginning of X-Men is kind of the vibe I was getting from it. It's like, oh, no, Picard's in another X-Men movie. Did you guys enjoy the intro being different than what we're used to with like the Next Generation, the original series, DS9? What did you guys think about this specific intro?
I'm gonna have to tell you next week because I didn't watch it. I was messaging Eric.
Okay. Eric, what did you think?
I thought it was great. I loved hearing the flute since Picard played the whatever it was that had a special name.
Oh, best episode in Star Trek Next Generation.
Right. And I think they were playing off that because we hear the flute at the beginning. And I think at the end, too, it comes in. When it shows you, it's pieces of Picard, right? His face all coming back together slowly. I'll have to rewatch it again. I may be wrong about that, but that's what I thought it was. I don't know. I thought the music was good. It was fitting. It fits in a lot with Discovery's music and intro. So that's kind of what I expected, I guess.
Mike?
I'm gonna have to watch it maybe a couple more times. It's definitely a different, but maybe that's fitting because this show's not really Star Trek. It's Picard, so maybe that's a fitting intro for this show.
Ryan, what did you think of the intro?
Well, I just want to say, unlike the rest of these guys, I actually watched and paid really close attention. I thought it was interesting that it was a change of pace. It signaled right then and there this was going to be something different than what you probably were expecting or what you've seen before. I've never seen the Discovery intro. I mean, my favorite intro is the one in Enterprise. I think that song's cool, but I know I'm in the minority on that particular front. But putting him back together again, I think is probably the symbolism they're wanting to show with that particular. Starts with a crack and then everything comes down, and then we're slowly building stuff back up again. So just with a little bit of the themes that we see is already going to be explored in the show, I think the opening makes sense. Music was okay. I mean, it wasn't a jam and pop song like it was in Enterprise, but hey, I understand it's a different movie, different show. So yeah. I will accept it. So
I think you and Mike are spot on with that as far as the rebuilding of Picard. Because one of the things that he had mentioned in the show when he was laying on the couch, he's just talking about laying there and staying there waiting to die. And it's time for him to get up and do something. And I think it just symbolizes his refocus on being who he was and becoming the Picard that the captain, the admiral that he once was. And, not giving in on life and not giving up and actually fighting for something again. And I think that's kind of what the intro for me kind of symbolized based on that.
Excellent job, guys. All right, thanks for listening to our podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be covering Star Trek Picard every week shortly after the episode, so make sure you hit that follow and subscribe button. Have yourself a great day.